Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest edition of SuperNova Commencements. I am your host, Kashi Segal, and we have another great show for you today, as always. Today, we are talking about higher education. And speaking of higher education, I think a lot of you are out for summer. Some of you might be in summer school, but we're gearing back up for the school year, and we're going to be talking about what it means to be in school today. All right, let's talk about careers in higher education. This is our Career Powered by Data segment, brought to us by our partners at Stepping Blocks. They have a lot of data, 100 million people worth, probably more at this point, and they can analyze trends. They can tell you what you need to know for the industries you're thinking about going into, what skills, where to go to school, if you haven't selected that already, for all of our high schoolers, maybe grad schools. Anyways, check them out. All right, so the most common educational background for a career in higher education is, I'm going to wait for you to guess it, education. That's right. Okay, there are about 750,000 people in the industry. That's a wide range of job titles, all the way from professor to president and everybody in between. The average age of the industry is 39, and it is 53% female. I kind of expected it to be a little higher, so I was surprised by that. Okay, top skills: public speaking. I think that makes sense. Research and teaching. Skills that might make you a little bit more cash: grant writing. Everybody needs a good grant writer. If you can write a grant, you will always be in business. Software development, which we've seen be a big deal over the last year and a half. And distance education. Again, that seems self-explanatory after the year we had. Across the country, a lot of people come from these schools: Arizona State, University of Minnesota, and NYU. So, coming from all over the country, all kind of perspectives, that is a little bit about higher education. So now I want to bring up our guest today, who's going to talk to us all about that. Let me bring her on screen. Hello, Alvetta.
Hi, Kashi.
Hi. So Dr. Alvetta Thomas is president of Southern Crescent Technical College. So we are very excited to have her. And we're going to talk about higher education and also non-traditional higher education and what that looks like, because it's pretty valuable. Alvetta, could you please start us off with where you're from and where did you go to school?
Well,
what'd you major in also?
Okay. So I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, believe it or not. A really exciting place to grow up. Grew up at a time of change during the civil rights movement in Montgomery, Alabama, which made it very, very interesting. Montgomery, Alabama is also an HBCU community, with Alabama State University being a strong anchor there. So many of my relatives and my mom and family went to Alabama State University, and that is where I went to college to get my four-year degree. My four-year degree is in political science. But it also has a teaching certification attached to it. Not because I started out thinking that I would be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My aunt was a teacher. But that was not a career that I thought about. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. That was what I really aspired to do, and which is why I got a degree in political science. But along the way, and a wise advisor said to get the BS rather than the BA in political science so that I could add the teaching certification. And he said, you never know what you'll have to do. So I suggest that you get this. Great decision. Glad I did it. But I went on to graduate school at Clark Atlanta University and majored again in political science, finished my master's and almost finished a doctorate, finished all of the coursework. I was one of those ABDers, but was very young because I went straight through. I went to undergrad in 3 years, and I entered graduate school very, very young. And so did some work, went to work on Capitol Hill, US Capitol Hill, and didn't finish the doctorate, didn't do the dissertation. So later on, fast forward, I'm working, and I call that my unfinished business. I matriculated at the University of Georgia and finished a doctorate. So I completed my unfinished business while I was working. However, during that course, I bounced around in a lot of different jobs, honestly. I taught a little bit, but I found my niche in higher ed administration. Started in doing that, kind of working for the United States Department of Defense as an education specialist, kind of managing training for the Army and the Air Force. So that's kind of how I got into higher ed and adult education leadership. So my career evolved from that.
Okay, so there's a lot in there.
Mm-hmm.
First, let's start talking about political science. Why political science? What about that major really spoke to you?
That's interesting because I had a conversation with someone this morning kind of about me and my career trajectory. I think part of it was I'm a natural critical thinker. I ask a lot of questions. And then for me, again, you remember I said earlier, I thought I wanted to go to law school. And so at that time, I thought, poli-sci was my road pathway rather to law school. But, later I realized that another great pathway to law school is also English or literature. But while in school for poli-sci, still thinking I was going to go to law school, I went to a number of conventions and actually started to think about taking the LSAT. And in that process, I was offered a scholarship to go to Clark Atlanta University and major in political science at the graduate level. And it was a great scholarship. It was a National Science Foundation Award. And I pretty much decided I wasn't going to pay for graduate school. And I know this is weird and it's probably not the best thing to say, but I'll go ahead and get it out there because,
we want to hear all of that.
Because as you're young, you make decisions for the wrong reasons. And so I knew that in order to go to law school and have it paid for, I was going to have to go at that time to the Northeast or the Midwest. I went to Iowa and visited, and it was 70 degrees when I left Alabama, and I got to Iowa and it was snow on the ground. I said, oh no, this is not for me. So I took the National Science Foundation Award and went to Clark Atlanta University and was greatly intrigued by the study of political science at the graduate level. And in that process, I also had an opportunity to become a congressional intern on US Capitol Hill, which was a great eye-opener for me. And I will have to be honest, that experience taught me that politics really wasn't the thing for me. I liked the study of politics, but I didn't like the activity of politics.
Yeah.
By its very definition is who gets what, when, and how. And then the how can sometimes get ugly. And so I saw that firsthand and I said, okay, I don't think this is the thing for me. So my career continued to evolve into different things. So I've written for magazines, for the Department of Defense. I was a writer editor for the U.S. Army Aviation Digest. And in working for the Department of Defense and the U.S. Army, then I embarked upon this career as an education specialist. And that kind of took my trajectory into higher ed and kind of got me to where I am today.
Yeah. And actually, I want to ask about the Department of Defense time. So you were at the Department of Defense kind of in a non-traditional role,
mm-hmm.
as far as what people think of when they think DOD. Mm-hmm. So first of all, what was it like to be at the DoD, and what was it like to be in a non-traditional role in a place where people have such a stereotype of what it is?
It was really interesting because actually my first job working for the Army Aviation Digest, if you can think about it, aviation is a traditionally male field. So here I am, this young 20-something African-American female, trying to work in an environment that was technically really all white male at the time. So I'm dealing with white male officers who were not just white male officers, but white male officers who were aviators. And aviators, have a different mindset. They can be very cocky sometimes. And so I'm editing their work. And I can tell you a quick story to let you know what that environment was like. And so I was writing a pilot submitted an article about an attack helicopter. And it was the AH-64. I'll never forget it. And he had a sentence that was incomplete in his article. And so as an editor, my job was to make sure that that the sentences were complete. And so I contacted him because I didn't want to change the meaning of it. And I said to him, we need to put a verb in the sentence. And he was smoking a cigar. And he leaned forward and he pounded his fist on the desk. He said, "Listen, little lady, this here is aviation language. I don't expect you to understand it." So I sat back in my chair and I leaned forward to him and I said, "You're correct, but a sentence is not a sentence without a subject and a verb. And either you insert a verb or I will if you want this published." So needless to say, he gave me a verb and we published the article and we became good friends after that. But, I had to stand my ground and not back down and stand strong in my conviction. So I worked in a male environment. And then another thing I would tell you, in terms of non-traditional, the other non-traditional piece of my Department of Defense experience was I spent some time working at the United States Air Force Historical Research Center as an archivist. And I was assigned to read military histories and determine when they could be released to the public. Many of them were top secret. And so I'm looking at top secret information to determine when it could be released to the public. And again, that was another environment in which it was primarily male. And so I have grown up in a career that was primarily male. And so if I could fast forward to my current career in higher ed with the Department of, which was then the Department of Technical and Adult Education and is now the Technical College System of Georgia. When I came to work into this system, all of the presidents of all of the college were white males. There were no African American or Black presidents or presidents of color in the system when I started to work in the system. And I'll never forget, I sat at my first President's Council meeting as a staff person, and I listened to the decisions that were being made in President's Council, and I almost said it, I did say it aloud because the lady that was sitting next to me heard it. I said, they are making decisions about people who look like me, but there's nobody who looks like me at the table. And she responded to me. She said, "You're right, but the commissioner is committed to changing that. And if you watch over the next few years, you will see additional diversity in this organization." And that was very true. It started to go from there, and then the organization did become a lot more diverse. I think women really were the first diverse group. A few males of color, but mostly women were the first diverse groups. And for a long time, there was only one African American female in the group of presidents, and that was my predecessor and mentor at Atlanta Technical College. Her name was Brenda Watts Jones, and so for a long time, she was the first and only Black female who was a president of a technical college in the state of Georgia. So she kind of blazed the trail and mentored me. So that I developed enough confidence to know that I could then do this job.
So what do you think was special about the technical college system of Georgia that they realized the need for a diverse array of voices around the table that like many organizations right now are not quite grasping? Why did they get it and others not?
Honestly, I think the commissioner, who was the founding commissioner of the organization, Kenneth Breeden, I think Dr. Breeden was just a forward-thinking man. And he understood the talent that he had in director and vice president's level, and he made a commitment to develop that talent. The other thing is, in our system, it's a unique skill set, and a unique understanding of how we promote and develop training. It's very similar to what the Department of Defense does in terms of how it develops its training. And so Dr. Breeden also knew that in order to have good leadership, he had to grow his own. And so when you have a lot of diversity in mid-level positions, it's easy to grow your own into upper management. So he was forward-thinking enough to see that, and I give him a lot of credit for, helping to create a diverse organization. And by the way, he was a white male.
Yeah, that's an important point.
Mm-hmm.
You need allies.
Absolutely.
How do you build allies at work? I mean, anywhere.
So I tell people all the time, I've been very, very fortunate in my career in that most of my promotions and primarily during my career trajectory, it was because someone saw what I was doing and supported and suggested that I take the next step. So usually when I'm talking to young people about careers and career pathways, one of the first things I tell them is that you never know who's watching. And so always do your very best. Growing up again in Montgomery, Alabama, in the height of the civil rights movement, my parents always taught me that I had to be better than before I was going to be considered equal to my counterparts. And so I always worked really hard at whatever job that I had, super achiever, overachiever. And so people notice when you work hard and you do a good job and you have strong work ethics. So I did that, but I was also fortunate enough to be in the pathway of people who cared about developing talent and mentoring people. So I mentioned Brenda Jones. Brenda was a really strong mentor for me. And she would always tell me, she'd say, Thomas, you're going to be a president. And I never thought about being a president. I was really happy being a vice president, working in a support role. But she saw something different in me and encouraged me to become a president. So I think mentoring is really important. I was listening to a session from a chief executive from AT&T, Georgia, and she said, lift as you climb. And that is so true. And I think that the importance of lifting as you climb is sometimes not emphasized nearly enough. And so I was very fortunate to have people who lifted as they climbed to help me along the way. And I have continued to do so. I'm really proud of the fact that I've mentored 3 vice presidents to presidents and numerous other deans into vice presidents. I'm really proud. That's one of the proudest things that I think I've done. So lift as you climb, I think, is really critical. And that is what has contributed to my success and career trajectory.
Yeah, I love that. Lift as you climb. Such a simple statement, but it's really powerful. What has it been like? You mentioned that you didn't think you'd ever be a president. I can't imagine you as anything but a president. So what has it been like to be that top role at an organization, to have the opportunity to lift others? Is there pressure? Is there responsibility? Is it amazing? What is it like?
Well, Kashi, it's all of that. It's a lot of pressure. I manage a 35 plus $1 million budget. I manage a lot of people, not just the people who work here, but I'm responsible for the students who matriculate. We have over 5,000 students who matriculate here at any given term. So I'm responsible for all of them, and I'm responsible for the people who work here. I'm responsible for the community. I'm responsible for the workforce that we serve and that we prepare people to go in. So it's a huge amount of pressure to do well. So many times I have been the only person of color in the room. That's a lot of pressure too, not to have someone else that looks like you to look up to and to look forward to. But with the pressure comes a lot of reward. So when people ask me about the best parts of my job, if you can think about graduation, I've graduated a number of times, whether it's kindergarten graduation, whether it's sixth grade, whether it's high school graduation, college graduation, graduate school graduation, whatever. It's an extremely happy time. And I get to do that every year, 2 times a year. And when I stand on that stage and sometimes pull students across that stage and understanding a lot of times what they had to go through to get across that stage, it is one of the proudest, most rewarding moments you can ever dream of. And not just that, but when I stand on that stage and I look in the audience and I see all the faculty that supported those students to get across that stage, and I know everything that they put into it because they poured themselves into it, because we believe that the success of our students is critical, and we look at that success through a lot of different lenses. So when I look at them and see all that they have put into it, I'm one proud president. And so the hard work, the responsibility somehow doesn't seem nearly as difficult when you see those kinds of rewards. But yeah, it is difficult, and you do lose sleep at night because it is a lot of responsibility, a lot of requirements, a lot of compliance requirements. So you have to know a lot. So my critical thinking skills, I think, have been the things that have helped me most in this job. The ability to quickly assess a problem and find a solution. And I tell my team all the time, the first answer should never be no. It should be let me look into it and figure it out, because 9 times out of 10 you can figure out a way to get to the finish line. It may not be the way the person asked you for, but you can figure out a way, find out where we're trying to go, and then let's figure out a way to get there. So super amount of pressure, but more reward than pressure.
I just want to point out that I don't think Alvetta is making all of the decisions by herself. She's relying on a team to help make decisions and help inform her so that she can make the best decisions. And so while the pressure, yes, can oftentimes be on the leader, and it is, you can build a great team around you, which
Yes.
she has, to make a lot of these hard decisions. So, and you have to support other people in making decisions. So
Absolutely. And I have to say, Kashi, that I do have a tremendous team. We meet once a week, and we talk about all issues that this college has and all of the successes that it has. And not only that, but, we come to the table with solutions. And I will say this too, the ability of a leader to listen is so critical. And I listen to my team. You have to listen. You have to accept their suggestions. And I tell you, sometimes as a leader, one of the hardest things is to give them sometimes the opportunity to fail, because I believe that no good leader is developed without failures. Your last guest talked about, failure. And the ability to get back up after those failures. I have had failures, And I watch my team. Sometimes they want to do something and I can see it, where it's headed. And sometimes I try to convince them that it's not headed in the right direction. But if they're adamant about it, sometimes I just let them go for it. But they learn a lot from that decision. And I'm not going to go back and say I told you so, but I do ask, what did you learn from it? And as long as it's not a catastrophic outcome, it's okay. And I allow them to do that, because I think that's an important part of learning. If I had not made mistakes, I would not have learned nearly as much as I learned. The other thing, that I talk about a lot with my team is that the two key characteristics of leadership, I believe, are vision and courage. Vision and courage. So you have to have vision to see the big picture, and courage to make the decisions that are necessary in order to get to the big picture. And enough courage to listen to people around you and allow them to perform as they should to support the organization. So vision and courage.
I like that. What do you do as a leader when or you have a fairly good idea as to what the path forward should be? And you said letting people fail is part of the process. But what about those times where you might have an employee or someone on the team who is resistant to ideas or any ideas? Like, how do you bring them along? How do you help them either see your point or help them get with the program?
So sometimes, it's a conversation. What I have found in dealing with people is that when you have a conversation and discuss the rationale, then they can begin to see the picture that you see. So I don't believe in dictating. I believe in saying, here's what I think we need to do, and here's why. And then I listen to what they think we should do and their rationale for why. Honestly, sometimes they bring me along with them, and I think, I didn't think about it that way. And that's a good point. And so let's try it that way. And then a lot of times in talking to me, they say, oh, I didn't look at it that way. Sometimes it's good. And as a matter of fact, I had a vice president tell me last week, that's why it's good to have different opinions so that you can see things a little bit differently. So it's a give and take. Again, I try to be flexible. So as long as it's not illegal, immoral, there's some flexibility. But we really have to work together. And the other thing is, my team should not be afraid to challenge me. I don't know everything. As a matter of fact, you should know more about your area than I know. I know enough about your area to be dangerous. You know the detail, and the devil is always in the detail. So, and I tell my team, watch out, because I promised the world, and you have to come back and fix it. So you better tell me what I need to promise. So, I have to allow them to work the detail. And so again, I've got to be the vision and allow them to work the detail and support them in their working out the detail, but also support them by bringing additional information to the table. The other thing is exposure to training. And exposure to other trends. Like, we look at national trends all the time. I mean, we don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, there's always somebody else doing what you're doing or trying to get to where you're trying to get. So read professional journals, go to conventions, make presentations. That's how you learn. So learn from best practices from others. So that's really, really key. And so I try to make it available for my team. I want them to get out there. I want them to do other things. I want them to get training. I want them to go to conventions. So absolutely.
So much of what you just talked about is hard to do on the fly when you're faced with a really different situation and the whole world is going through a situation at the same time.
Yeah.
What was it like being a leader and leading the campus through what we went through last year and are still kind of going through with the pandemic and COVID? It's hard to have like people to look to because they're also figuring it out. So how did you navigate that?
So initially, that infamous March 13th or 14th day when everything closed down, we did the same thing. And not only did we close down, but we had to shift our way of thinking because we were primarily a face-to-face class environment. And we had to quickly shift to an online environment. And so the bulk of that shift, the heavy lift, was with the faculty. So initially what we did was, we have a leadership team. The leadership team met every day virtually. No matter where you were or what you were doing, every day we met virtually. And we brought problems and solutions to the table. The other thing was, we had to quickly develop training and provide training for faculty so that we could continue relatively quickly to support our students because our mission is workforce development. And so many of the people who were working on the front lines were being trained at this institution. So I had nursing, I had registered nurses who were on the verge of completion. I had EMTs and paramedics who were on the verge of complete, respiratory therapists who were on the verge, surgical technologists who were on the verge of completion. And all these people were in great demand. So we had to work with our hospital and healthcare partners to figure that out. We had to work with our accrediting bodies to figure it out because we have requirements that are from accrediting bodies. Our nursing programs are accredited by the Georgia Board of Nursing. So we had to listen to them and find out how they were going to be flexible in the midst of the pandemic, understanding that we had to get students graduated. So I'm proud to say that we worked really hard and we actually were able to graduate our cohort of nurses early, and they did very, very well on their professional accreditation licensure and were able to immediately go to work. I'm happy to say that our students didn't run from the pandemic. Many of them continued in their clinical assignments. I think the challenge for clinicals was really a deeper challenge for the hospital because of the availability of PPE. So they had to use PPE for employees, but if I had student interns going into the hospitals, they also needed PPE. So what did we do as a college? We partnered with the hospitals. So any PPP that we had on hand for training, we provided it to our hospital partners. We provided our students with PPE so they could go in. We also provided our ventilators because we had a respiratory therapy program. So we loaned our ventilators to the hospitals so that they could have enough ventilators. So it was a daily task of I call puzzling it out and finding out new and different ways of doing things. But in doing that, it became more real to me that the work we do not only supports our students, but it supports the community. So we were supporting the healthcare community in this crisis. So we had to figure it out. We came back earlier than most people went to work. I tell people all the time, I came back to work last June, full time, and as did my team. And our faculty also started to come back to work. Not all of them, if they could continue to teach in an online environment, they did. But so much of our work is lab-based. And so students have to get those lab experiences in order to get to the clinical assignments. Right. So we had to come up with safe ways to conduct labs, unique ways to conduct labs. Some of our labs were virtual, but we had to come back in and do some what we call limited labs face-to-face, where we had much fewer students in the lab environment, maybe 2 or 3 students in the lab environment at the time, but we nevertheless had to figure out how to do it. So it was a very new experience for us, but communication, listening, and making decisions together, considering our accrediting bodies as well as our partners who needed our graduates. Those were the things that were really critical. And it was new to us. It was uncharted territories. It was a way of doing business that we'd never done before. But I think my critical thinking skills kicked in, and I have to say my team, they have a lot of critical thinking skills. And so working together, we were able to make it work. And then I also have to give, a big shout out to my allied health dean who took really a lot of responsibility. She became our COVID coordinator. So she was our health and safety advisor. She was the link between us and the hospitals, making sure that we were safely sending students into the clinical environment. So it was a lot of work. But again, when we started to graduate those students and send them to work in the hospitals, it was very rewarding.
I can only imagine. They must have been in such great demand, and the tools that you could help offer to the hospitals. Apart from the pandemic and COVID, although this I think is a good example, what role does a technical college play in a community? And why would somebody choose it over what people traditionally think is what college is?
So our mission is workforce development. And if now always when I talk to high school students and I ask them, what are they going to do? They say, well, I'm going to college. And I say, to do what? Well, I'm going to major in English, but that didn't tell me your career. So figure out your career and then choose the pathway that's best to get you there. So our career focus is really, in some cases, unique. I say we do everything from A to Z, from accounting and film and healthcare to those traditional careers that you think of for the technical college, which would be like carpentry and auto mechanics and drafting, industrial maintenance, industrial engineering. So all of the commercial truck driving, believe it or not, forklift driving, warehousing and distribution, logistics is huge right now. We offer a logistics training program, supply chain and logistics. But our graduates go directly to work, and our programs are typically 2 years or less. Some are 8 weeks long. Some are a year long. And so if you're really interested in going straight to work, then we're the place for you. The other thing that's unique about us is, when you think about a career area like healthcare, we have a lot of students who come to us want to be registered nurse, and that's a registered nurse. That's a real competitive field right now. So we typically get about 200 or 300 people who come to us each admission cycle, seeking nursing as a degree option. But at the end of the day, when it's time to select a cohort, we only select 50. So it's a highly competitive and selective process. So not everybody's going to get in, but we've become creative in dealing with our students and our applicants. If you don't get into nursing, then what would you like to do? So we have a number of other healthcare fields that are equally as rewarding as nursing that we try to redirect students in. For instance, cardiovascular technology. A lot of people don't even think about that, but that's a rewarding career. Right now, I think a median salary for our nursing graduates is right at about $70,000, but for cardiovascular, it's right at about $65,000. So it's not much difference. Same thing with respiratory therapy. That's a very rewarding career. There are a lot of different aspects to respiratory therapy, from pediatric respiratory therapy to NICU respiratory therapy. And those jobs, the median salary right now is about $65,000. So our students typically graduate in 2 years or less with no debt or little to no debt. In Georgia, we have a number of careers called high demand careers. And so in the state of Georgia, the governor has identified high demand careers and has authorized HOPE dollars, which is the lottery funding for education. We can use lottery funding dollars to support high demand careers. And so many of our students who enter into high demand careers come to us tuition free because they can access dollars from the HOPE grant or the HOPE scholarship. And a lot of people don't know that there are two different types of HOPE. The HOPE scholarship requires that you have the B average and that you maintain the 2.5 3.5 average or a 2.0 average during your college time. The Hope Grant doesn't. So there are a lot of different avenues for students to pay for their tuition. And we also have a lot of scholarships. So many of our students matriculate and complete with strong careers, tuition free. Another good example on the other end of it, outside of healthcare, something like diesel mechanics. A diesel mechanic can make a six-figure income easily, especially now. A truck driver can make a six-figure income easily now if they are going across the road, traveling across the United States carrying loads. The same thing with automotive and auto collision. A high-end automotive shop looking for a certified auto technician now is paying six figures to get them. So there are a lot of rewarding careers that we can provide for students who are interested in going directly into the workforce. And oftentimes, Kashi, what happens is our students go out there first and do something different because it was what somebody else thought they should do. Oh, my mom thought I should major in this, but I really liked cooking. So we have students who come back for culinary arts. About 2 years ago, the valedictorian of our local school system came here for culinary arts. People tried to get her to do a lot of different things. She said, no, I want to be a chef. And a chef is a good job. A chef can make six figures. I mean, look at Hell's Kitchen and some of the other chef shows. They do very, very well. So we pride ourselves in supporting our workforce development. And we are primarily one of the reasons that Georgia is one of the #1 states to do business in, because we provide those careers. When a company wants to relocate, one of the big questions they ask is about education. Are people prepared to come to work in my industry? Can you support them? And Georgia has a lot of avenues in which to support industry, from our four-year institutions to our technical colleges to our graduate institutions and our professional institutions. We can support industry, which is one of the reasons we're the #1 state to do business in and year out.
It's true. If you're not in Georgia, you should come here. That's our plug.
Yeah.
Chamber would be happy.
Yeah,
okay, so we've got some questions coming in. So I want to shift focus a little bit to student questions. So let's start with this one. Ryan, I think, would like to know, what was the one decision you made that had the most impact on your life?
I think shifting my gear from going to law school to going to graduate school. I really do think that had the most impact, because that kind of started my trajectory to get to where I am now. And what I like to say to people all the time is, it's okay to shift gears and not quite know what you want to be when you grow up. But it's good to try to figure it out when you're young. Yeah. So that decision, I think, kind of helped to lead my career in this direction. And it took me away from a total focus on going to law school or teaching to learning that there were other different careers out there. And it also opened the door for me to go to work on Capitol Hill. And that was an eye-opening experience for me too, because that exposure taught me not just a lot about politics, but a lot about economics in the United States, a lot about workforce and jobs, because one of the committees that I worked on had to do with children's programs and the impact of funding on children's programs. So it taught me a lot of things about opportunities that I would have, and not just being stuck into one thing, but really considering other opportunities and exposure.
Right. Benjamin wants to know, what is something that you learned later in life that you wish you had learned sooner?
What I learned later in life that I wish I had learned sooner is more about, I think, retirement preparation. So I think I'm well prepared for retirement, but I wish I had started saving for retirement with my first job in high school. And so I encourage people to save a lot and save early. The other thing I wish I had known sooner was the importance of, I went straight through school and straight through undergraduate school into graduate school and got kind of burnt out, which is probably why I didn't write the dissertation when I finished my coursework. I never really worked through that process. And so I believe that getting hands-on work experience is important, even in the educational process. So college students should co-op, college students should travel, college students should get internship experiences, because that's the way you learn more about the job. So looking back on it, I wish I had done more of that while I was in college than I did. But that, I think that would be my biggest two takeaways for that.
That is great advice, and nobody ever talks about that, but that is very important. Okay. Kate wants to know, what is your advice for not letting what others say get to you?
Stay true to your passion. Know your truth. Rely on your truth. And at the end of the day, know that you have to look at yourself in the mirror every day. You are the captain of your ship, and you can't change what other people think or do. The only thing you can change is you. And so you have to change the way you interact with others and the way you allow other people to make you feel. Over the years doing this work that I've done, I had to develop a tough skin. And my skin is still toughening, because I still run into situations that are very, very difficult, and situations where people say things that they shouldn't say, or situations where people criticize me in a way that's sometimes hurtful. But at the end of the day, if you know that you're doing what is right for the right reasons, then you have to redirect your thought process and stay focused on the goal, stay focused on the end result, stay focused on helping to support others.
Great advice. Adam wants to know if you have any regrets. So he says, do you have any regrets? Would you change anything? Like, do you wish you had done something with poli-sci since your degrees are in it?
I really don't. Because honestly, I ended up with the best of both worlds. Because if you think about a field like poli-sci, most people don't really think about, you think about the study of politics, but everything is political. Everything that we do, my work now is political. I don't like the political part of it, but it really is. And so it kind of trained me to do what I do now. It gave me a lens through which to view how decisions are being made, how government decisions are being made. So, when I think about it, I don't really have regrets. I've used every experience that I've had in life as a part of my journey, my learning. And I always think about, on my computer screen, I used to have a saying, life is a journey, not a destination. And so each aspect of my life really has been a journey. And I think the most important piece of that journey that I sometimes forget is that my steps are also ordered. And so when I look back on my career, I can see how my career developed and how it didn't develop by accident. It was developed really methodically and with purpose. And so that's the purpose that I'm driven by, doing the work I'm doing. That's what drives me to support people. At Southern Crescent, we say we build strong students, strong careers, and strong communities. And that's really important to me. Building community, building people, helping people to see their potential and that they can do better in providing those opportunities. And that poli-sci helped me to develop to do that. So so many different aspects of poli-sci that I use in my day-to-day career, my day-to-day life. So it was a good decision.
This is kind of related. Melissa wants to know, how do you know you're doing the right thing for your career? So like, how does a student figure out what the barometer is?
So I didn't mention it somewhere in between that I had a job as the executive director of a charter school in Minnesota. And the name of the charter school was Skills for Tomorrow Charter High School. And at Skills for Tomorrow, the mission was to train high school students and get them ready for a career. And when I took that job, I asked the current director, I said, Tess, you know, how do you talk to students and help them to select a career? So how do you direct them for a career? And she said, I don't. She said, I tell them to do what makes you happy. And if you do what makes you happy, you will do it well. And so I say, find that thing that you're passionate about. Find that thing that makes you happy. Visualize it. You know, sometimes when I do seminars, I have students that, you know, close your eyes and fast forward to 5 years, fast forward to 10 years. What do you see yourself doing? Now, open your eyes and think about the steps that it will take to get you there. So that kind of visioning. And if you're doing something you love, you can't go wrong. You really can't. And you do what you love, and you will do a great job of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Along those lines, is asking a question I ask a lot. What is your purpose?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out sometimes. But I think, you know, and I ask myself that question a lot. So I look at the situations that God has placed me in, and my purpose really is to help people. I will share this that I don't share often, as I listened to a previous person who was on your show, Kashi. I was 16 years old and pregnant. I had a baby at 16. So I went through college with a baby. So I've done everything that I did as a teenage mother. I was fortunate because I had a huge support system. So a lot of what I went through is the lens in which I see my work. And it is how I look at the work that I'm doing. And so, again, at every step of the way, my steps have been ordered, doors have been opened. And when the door opens, walk through it. When the door closes, understand that there's a better door for you. There's another door that will open that will give you more abundance than the previous door. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that, you know, I talked about going to work on Capitol Hill as an intern. I was offered that opportunity as an undergraduate and could not take it because I was trying to finish early to get to graduate school to accept my scholarship. But lo and behold, while in graduate school, that opportunity came around again for me. And it was a better opportunity because it paid more money and gave me a longer time working as an intern. So don't get discouraged when the door closes. Look toward the next door that's going to open, because if you focus on the closed door, you won't see the next one that opens, and you'll miss a great opportunity.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite pieces of advice. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, Rosalie wants to know, what is the best advice you have ever gotten?
Be honest and be true to yourself. I think that's the best advice that I've ever gotten, and it is really what I live by. I'm painfully honest, so much so to sometimes I have to remember to put a bow on what I say. So that's the other piece of advice that I've gotten from my mentor. She used to tell me, Thomas, you tell the truth, but you have to put a bow on it. So I have to, a lot of times, shut down, take a deep breath, and think about how I'm going to say something, because communication is only good communication if it's received well by the listener. So you have to focus on making sure that the listener understands what you're saying and that they receive it well.
Yep.
And if it's a situation that's antagonistic, then all they're going to get is the ugly part. They won't get the good part. So I've had to learn to be quiet for a minute and think about it and put a bow on it.
One of the things that I always heard growing up from my parents was, it's not what you say, but how you say it.
How you say it, always,
Yeah.
always. My mother used to tell me, think about it. Is it kind? Is it necessary? And is it true? And if it doesn't meet those 3 criteria, perhaps you shouldn't say it.
That is good advice. All right, last question. Kellyanne would like to know, what are you reading right now?
Oh, goodness. Actually, I'm reading your dad's book.
Oh, wow. I did not plant that question.
I know you didn't, but actually I am. And, reading his experience has been awesome for me. So I was gifted the book by your mom. And so it's actually in my car. And so whenever I get a minute, I read a few pages. So, yeah.
So
Great lessons on growing and leadership.
Yep. And for all who don't know, by now you should know, but it's called Close the Loop. And I also did an interview with Dad when it first came out. So check it out. It's back at the beginning of all of these, but you know where to find all our past shows. Speaking of which, we're out of time, but go to the website. Past shows are there. Future shows and schedule is there. And you can sign up for our mailing list. That is the only place where you will get access to all our cool internships and opportunities that we have for you. So please sign up for the mailing list. And so Alvetta, do you have anything?
I do have one last closing thing. I have to make a plug for the work that we do in the technical college system of Georgia. There's a technical college within 20 minutes of where anybody lives in the state of Georgia. And so if you're not sure of what you want to do, if you need to retool your career, I say look to your local technical college to see what they have to offer, because there are a wealth of opportunities for careers. And we often have people who come here who are retooling, who already have a bachelor's or a master's degree, who want to do something more specific with their careers. So look to your local technical college for support. And even if you're already in a career and working, perhaps we can support you with additional training.
Absolutely. Lifelong learning.
Shameless plug. Can't help it. Love what I do.
We love those. So Dr. Thomas, thank you so much for being with us today. Students, thank you so much for being with us today. Have a great summer. Enjoy your week this week. Do something fun. Rest, recharge, read a book. And remember, we will see you here next time. It's a blessing to be a blessing. So be kind to people today. We'll see y'all soon. Bye.
Thanks, Kashi.
Bye.